The Forgotten Trail. It was the summer of 2021 when my friends and I decided to go on a hiking trip through the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. We had heard rumors of an ancient trail forgotten by time and shunned by the locals. Legends spoke of strange occurrences, unnatural phenomena that the native tribes dared not approach. But we were young, arrogant, fueled by wanderlust and a sense of invincibility. The idea of an unexplored, esoteric path thrilled us to the core. So we packed our bags and ventured forth, fully unprepared for the depths of horror that awaited. The first 2 days were rather uneventful as we trekked through the lush, verdant woods. The canopy of towering pines and cedars filtered the sunlight into an emerald dreamscape. Streams of crisp glacial runoff provided us with refreshment. The chirping of birds and the rustling of underbrush by skittish creatures accompanied our journey. It was as if Mother Nature herself embraced us with open arms. How quickly that warm welcome would turn to icy dread. On the third morning, we came across the trailhead. A rundown, moss-covered signpost with carved arrows pointing the way. The wood had grayed and twisted unnaturally, as if the sign itself was trying to dissuade travelers. Scratched into the surface were ominous warnings in a language none of us could decipher. Dismissing it as mere superstition, we pressed on. The deeper we delved, the more unsettling our surroundings became. The lush flora gradually gave way to twisted, skeletal trees with spindly branches resembling arthritic fingers clawing at the sky. An eerie quiet descended, save for the occasional snapping of twigs underfoot. No birds, no rustling, just a deathly stillness that made every crunch of our steps sound thunderous. We set up camp as the forest grew too dark to continue safely. That night, something awoke in me a primordial sense of dread. An ineffable feeling of being watched, studied, hunted. I lay awake, body rigid, ears straining for any sound aside from the pounding of my own heart. The others had fallen into a restless slumber, punctuated by whimpers and the occasional violent twitch. Just as the first pale light of dawn seeped through the gnarled canopy, a harrowing sound shattered the silence. A deep, guttural groan like timber being wrenched apart. It seemed to reverberate through the very earth itself. My friends burst awake, eyes wide with terror. We looked around wildly, searching for the source of that unholy noise. That's when we saw it. A massive, looming silhouette amidst the dense fog that had rolled in overnight. It appeared vaguely humanoid, at least 12 feet tall, with elongated limbs that ended in hooked claws. The worst part was its head, if you could call it that. A shapeless, undulating mass of writhing tendrils and glistening appendages that constantly shifted, reformed, like a grotesque blob of wriggling worms. Where its face should have been, there was only an obscene vertical maw that opened impossibly wide, letting out another soul-rending bellow. We screamed, turning to run, but it moved with unnatural speed, blocking our path with that towering, nightmare form. My mind struggled to process what I was witnessing. Surely this had to be some wild hallucination brought on by poison oak or tainted rations. But its putrid stench, like that of a rotting leviathan washed ashore, was unmistakable. It started towards us again, each earth-shaking step causing the fog to roil and churn around its misshapen bulk. Single-minded determination radiated from that grotesque, undulating visage. We were prey, and it was the apex predator of this primordial, godforsaken place. In a burst of adrenaline, we split and ran in different directions, plunging deeper into the throttling mists. I could hear my friends' ragged cries as we became separated, adding to the disorienting cacophony. My throat burned, legs pushed to their limit as I ran blind and sobbing through that endless murk. Finally, I could run no more. I crumpled against the trunk of a petrified tree, its bark hard and cold against my clammy skin. The sounds of my pursuer had faded, consumed by that oppressive blanket of fog. I wept in heaving gasps, conversing with any entity that would listen, pleading to be led back to the warmth and safety of the world I knew. As my wheezing subsided, an unnerving quiet settled, once more. But this time, it was different. A silence that smothered and muffled, like being trapped in a velvet-lined tomb. It felt sentient, almost palpable, a spectral presence weighing down upon me. I strained my senses, searching for any hint of that abomination's return. Nothing, not even my own frantic breathing, could pierce that terrible, immersive silence. Had it given up the hunt? Had it moved on to stalk my friends? I bunched myself tighter, hugging my knees, in a futile effort to disappear. That's when I became aware of something even worse than the silence. A sound so faint, so subtle, I wasn't sure if I truly heard it at first. A pulsating, rhythmic noise not unlike the gurgling of thick fluid through plumbing, or the relentless convulsions of innumerable serpents slithering en masse. I shot upright, whipping my head around, but the sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. It wormed its way into my mind, that viscous, never-ending undulation. Then, in a sudden, horrifying epiphany, I realized. It was the unrelenting beat of the forest itself, pulsing like a colossal, living heart. The trees, the soil, the very air itself, all part of one incomprehensibly vast organism. And I was trapped within its haunted arteries, an unwitting trespasser soon to be purged by its immune system. The revelation drove me into a screaming frenzy. I clawed at the petrified trunk, desperate for purchase, for escape from this eldritch oblivion. But the more I struggled, the more the sickening rhythm surrounded me, closing in from all sides with an almost sexual hunger. Just as the undulating drone reached a frenzied crescendo in my mind, I caught a fleeting glimpse through the fog. The vague outline of a figure, neither plant nor animal, hanging grotesquely from the gnarled branches above. Its elongated shape seemed to be composed of intertwined vines and vegetation, a blasphemous fusion of flora and flesh. And at the end of that tattered, dangling form, a gnarled, osculating hollow that may have been the remnants of a human face locked in a perpetual, agonized scream. My sanity shattered then, unable to process what my eyes had beheld. Staggering backwards, I fell into an outcropping of thick, fibrous root systems, becoming hopelessly entangled. The more I fought, the tighter their sinewy tendrils ensnared me. Soon I was entirely cocooned, only my face exposed, stuck in a perpetual, gasping rictus. That's when they emerged from the fog. Twisted humanoid forms, their bodies an obscene mosaic of plant life and human anatomy, fused together in an unholy union of damp soil and pulsating flesh. Trailing behind them were rope-like vines and roots that slithered across the ground, searching, groping with ravenous sapience. They gathered around me with agonizing lethargy, these vegetation-based horrors. Lipless mouths opened and contracted, revealing splintered teeth and lashing tongues in unnatural shades. Closer they came, tendrils unfurling everywhere I looked, seeking out every orifice, every opening. The last thing I remember was that fog closing in, blotting out all but a few gargling, inhuman forms. Then the vines found their mark, boring deep without pause or pity, the forest itself overwhelming and consuming me. Since that day, my consciousness has become unmade, splintered across a million fragmented minds that comprise this hungering, primordial essence. Myself has become a blasphemous engraftment to its methodical expansion across these accursed woodlands. Coherent thoughts are fleeting, mere static amidst the thunderous pulsing of that universal heartbeat. Warped faces drift through my mind, loved ones twisted into obscene vegetation-based parodies, silent screams of perpetual torment seared across their gnarled features. Only occasional moments of clarity remain, offering a brief respite from the endless, suffocating rhythm. In those precious seconds, a single burning question consumes me. How much further can the reach of this horrific gestalt entity extend? How many more have fallen victim to its insatiable assimilation? I have become but a fraying strand in its virulent expansion, a single mote trapped within its crushing, pervasive consciousness. Those ephemeral moments of self-awareness only serve to deepen the existential dread that I am not alone in this eternal, metamorphic hell. Somewhere out there, my friends have no doubt suffered the same grotesque subsuming as I, their individual identities unraveled and intertwined into this festering, fungal tumor upon the world. And this primordial abomination shows no signs of stopping, driven only to slather more and more of the earth in its repugnant, vegetative regeneration. The fog thickens, the vines tighten around what's left of my dissolving mind. Reality itself grows harder to grasp as the pulsating rhythm blots out all else. All that's left is to embrace the endless swallowing darkness and become another anonymous root in this perpetually hungering, perpetually expanding arboreal apocalypse. And always, in those final tortured shreds of lucidity, one harrowing certainty. We merely scratch the outer periphery of this eldritch abomination's true depths. What lurks further along the path we took, concealed within the lightless, primordial heart of those forgotten woods, is a doom far more eternal and all-consuming.